achieve our goal. Thank you.
Thank you. Statelessness, as you probably all know, has a devastating impact on the lives of millions of people around the world, and I've seen this firsthand as in my role as a Goodwill ambassador. They experience marginalisation and exclusion from cradle to grave, and those of us who have a nationality and have a paper identity, it's often very hard for us to imagine, because we take this for granted, just like breathing, it's hard for us to imagine the degree of invisibility that and despair often that stateless people experience. Not only do they not belong anywhere, but they're denied an education, medical care. They can't, their mobility is extremely limited. They can't travel, no driver's license, they're unable to work, they can't open a bank account, they can't marry, and can't even get a death certificate. So talk about a low carbon footprint. It's total invisibility. And the desperate and horrific gift that they often give to their children is that their children too become stateless. So it's a generational problem. And when I was in Lebanon on one of my first missions with UNHCR, I had the privilege to meet with many stateless families, and of course Lebanon is a country which has the nationality laws inhibit the mother conferring nationality upon their children. And I met one extraordinary young girl, Rama, who was at the time 9 years old. Her mother was Lebanese and her father was from a minority, and so was a stateless man. Mother was unable to confer her nationality onto her daughter, so Rama was stateless. She was one of the brightest, most intelligent young girls I've ever met. And even at the age of 9, her hopes of what she called of becoming a baby doctor, she could feel were becoming dimmer and dimmer and dimmer, because the prospect of her ability to go to high school were very slender. And I could also, as a parent, relate very much to her parents' anguish and guilt and their sense of powerlessness of being able to change that situation. And it was a very inhumane and heartbreaking and devastating situation. And as Carol attested, statelessness often has quite simple, straightforward solutions. I mean, there are many causes, of course, for statelessness, but it is a man-made problem and it is solvable. Like in Rama's case, it is simply a legislative change to remove the gender discrimination laws in that country. And I applaud Sierra Leone and Madagascar for recently committing to change their gender discriminatory laws in their nationality laws. But states do define citizenship, and so states therefore do have the power to remove those roadblocks to citizenship for stateless people. And I think that now is the time to act. Halfway through the I Belong campaign, the world can end statelessness, and it's a momentous day today. Most of the world's countries are represented here today, and I appeal to all of those states, and it's very positive that we've got almost 200 pledges already to work with UNHCR to find tangible solutions and to prevent and eradicate the unnecessary blight of statelessness, and give those who are denied their right to nationality their basic human right to belong. And as we've seen in Bangladesh, when I was there, the scale of the problem caused by the statelessness of the Rohingya people is overwhelming. And I think we should learn as a species from the enormity of this problem, that what become a small, localised problem, when it goes on decade after decade after decade, it becomes a problem beyond that country's borders and becomes an international crisis. So let's not let other issues of statelessness rise to the level of the problems that the Rohingya and therefore the Bangladeshis are also experiencing. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you everyone for being here. Actually, I want to be so brief. I'm sharing 30 years of my life, 31 years of my life in 2 minutes. What really helped me is raising awareness, is speaking about my story, is sharing every detail of it. I was born stateless. I lived 26 years of my life as stateless person. I didn't know that's statelessness. I didn't know the word stateless. I couldn't label myself, neither define myself, because the awareness was so little. Once I got to Brazil, I arrived a stateless person, but they get me in because just considering me coming from Syrian parents and as a refugee. I started from scratch, from -0 in Brazil, speaking 4 languages with a master's degree, working on distributing journals, and speaking about statelessness, speaking from the small Uber driver and taxi driver to big events and presidents and everyone. Because statelessness needs to be here, and we need to speak about it. I should talk about my story. Yeah. Okay, briefly. Once you're born, you can get your nationality by 2 ways, or by birthplace or by bloodline. My parents both are Syrian. My mom is Muslim and my father is Christian. In Syria, the interreligious marriage is illegal. So once they fall in love, they knew they had a problem. They knew they cannot register this. They came to Lebanon and they had 3 kids, my sister, me, and my brother. 3 kids born in Lebanon. In Lebanon, you're Lebanese only if your father is Lebanese. And not being able to be Syrian because the interreligious marriage is not accepted in Lebanon. And my mom, as a woman, still Syria and Lebanon, they belong to these 25 countries where a woman cannot pass her nationality to her kids. So we're not Lebanese, we're not Syrian. We're deprived from all our rights as a human being. Basic rights. Buying a SIM card, going to school, working, doing any simple thing. Even in Lebanon, there are many parts of Lebanon that I don't know, and I can't even risk it to go because they have a lot of checkpoints. And passing a checkpoint was a nightmare. So in Brazil, we could change this only because we started to raise awareness. Because of the UNHCR campaign, the I Belong campaign, because of civil society, because of the goodwill of all the ministers and people that they really hard worked, on May 2017, they did a new law that have a definition for stateless person. A simple thing, a definition. How come you will count them? You will know how many persons you have if they are the invisible between us. You will never know, maybe your neighbor is stateless as well. Maybe you could be born as a stateless, depending on the place where you were born and depending on your parents and all the laws that exist. It's a simple thing, changing the laws. It's not that simple. But if we look at stateless people at resource, economically and socially, and you know they have the potential, you know you can change this and give them this chance in order to make this change and make this world a better place. Because we need to make more stateless people. I had the privilege today to be with you here and share a little bit of my story, but it's a privilege. We need to let those stateless people be more between us, speak, because this is their need as a human being to exist and to belong. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. We'll open it up to questions. So a hand up there first.
Thank you. Jeremy Lange for the French Public Radio. I had 2 questions. First one is a bit naive, but I was wondering, how is it possible to end statelessness in the next 5 years when we don't know how many people exactly are concerned? That would be the first one. And the second one would be, are you afraid that of the attempt in European countries certain governments to deprive people from their nationalities when accused of acts of terrorism? Is that one of the concerns for statelessness? Thanks.
Thank you very much for those questions. It's extremely ambitious, indeed, to try and end the problem of statelessness in 10 years. As I mentioned, new people come into existence every day. We have families, people are on the move. We live in a world where people have connections with many countries. Sometimes it can be very confusing when we had the massive state dissolutions in the early 1990s. We had people who, the mother was born in Slovenia, the father was born in what became Croatia, the child was born in what became Bosnia-Herzegovina, and they lived in Serbia. So what's the right nationality? It can be very complicated. However, we believe our former High Commissioner, who's now the Secretary General, held in 2011 an event, and states came and states told us they want to act on this problem. They don't want to see this problem. And our current High Commissioner has the 10-year campaign going. This is one reason why we're having this pivotal moment, where we can come together, take stock, see what has been done and what is left to be done. I would give the example of Kyrgyzstan. Some 20 years after the dissolution of the former Soviet Union, there were still people who had Soviet documents only. And the Kyrgyz government, together with the Nansen Award winner this year, this NGO, they rode on horseback into the mountains to actually find, proactively go out and find who is that stateless person and resolve their case. It was over 13,000 people that they ensured. They have now been brought into legal identity with Kyrgyz nationality. With that combination of the political will, of the ability to identify where people are, and of being proactive, we believe we can achieve the goal, despite it being extraordinarily ambitious indeed. On your second comment, we would appeal to states. Of course, some states are party to the 1961 Convention on the Reduction of Statelessness. There are certain frameworks within which states must abide by the rule of law. So they have to assess who is this person, what is the accusation, is there something that fits within the legal framework that would make it appropriate to remove the nationality, or is it better to manage this through a rule of law system? Removing the nationality does not remove the crime, does not address the root problem. And of course, we see in some instances where that removal of nationality may have very, very serious repercussions for the children of such people. Children are innocents. They cannot be held accountable for the crime of someone else. At the same time, of course, terrorist acts are grievous, and they must be held to account. So there are approaches and frameworks and systems and advice and rule of law constructs designed precisely to deal with those challenges. And we look to work with states, to cooperate with them, to ensure that we can go forward in the best possible way.
Gabriela.
Thank you very much. Gabriela Sotomayor, a Mexican journalist. Two questions, if may I. One is, I would like to know if today you saw any positive sign of the government, of Myanmar government, to grant nationality to the Rohingyas. Did you see any positive sign, something that moved a little bit? And my other question is, recently Mr. Trump revived the idea to abolish birthright citizenship, especially of children born to irregular migrants. What do you think about this idea? This could put thousands of children at risk of statelessness. What are your comments on this? Thank you.
Thank you for this. Well, we haven't yet heard from states on their perspectives on the I Belong campaign and on any stateless issues they may be dealing with. So when it comes to Myanmar, we're not quite sure yet what their contribution might be during this particular session of the Executive Committee. Nonetheless, we know we've been working very closely with the authorities, and this is one of the issues that is under discussion, whether there is an immediate addressing of the problem of statelessness or whether it's a step along the way. People have been offered, certain people have been offered the option to return. So it's a discussion, it's a process. It has taken decades for the problem to come to this point. It will take some time to resolve, but of course we know that that is one of the things that has to be addressed in order for people to return in safety and dignity and to stay in safety and dignity. On the question of birthright citizenship, well, indeed, some countries in the world grant nationality based on birth on their territory. Some countries in the world, as Maha was saying, give it because you're descended from one of their nationals, and many countries have a combination thereof. It is a state's sovereign right to determine how they go about the grant of nationality. However, whatever the approach is, it should not lead to instances of statelessness. And that's what we work with states to ensure that they can avoid.
Lisa.
Thank you. Yes, Lisa Schlein, Voice of America. Ms. Blanchett, this is a question for you. I was wondering whether you were working with your own government regarding the stateless people in your country, and in particular, if you're taking a personal interest in the hundreds of refugees who are living in Limbo and Nauru Island. I don't know whether they are classified as stateless because maybe they're still considered as Indonesian citizens, but if they're applying for citizenship, I mean, for protection and refugee status in Australia, and they're not given the chance, then they're living in a kind of never-never land, I think.
Well, I come from a country of immigrants and refugees that was, by a colonial invasion notwithstanding, was very positively built on the welcoming embrace of those who were seeking asylum and those who were cast out from other countries. So it has been profoundly distressing and bewildering to me as an Australian citizen to witness what has been going on onshore and offshore in our relationship to asylum seekers and refugees. And of course, the average time that a refugee is displaced is between 70 and 20 years. So the longer this situation goes on, the greater the chance that that children will be born to refugees who will be at severe risk of statelessness. So it is a very deep concern of mine. And it was part of my shame, I think, about what was going on in my own country that drove me to work with an organisation like UNHCR just to raise awareness about not only the refugee crisis, but more specifically, I first got engaged with the I Belong campaign. And the wonderful thing about that campaign is that the longer the global displacement crisis goes on, it's about, in the first instance, management. But with the ratification of statelessness is a very, very achievable thing. And so, I mean, at least that's one positive thing. But I think it's of great concern to me, and it should be of great concern to all Australians, and obviously is to the global community.
Very quickly, do you have any sense that the situation with the Nauru refugees is moving, or is this something that seems to be frozen?
Yes, it does. It does seem to be frozen. There was some movement, I think, between America and Australia, the details of which I'm not aware of. And unfortunately, a lot of these conversations are not happening in public discourse. They're happening behind closed doors. And so it's to that end that I'm very interested in raising awareness of the issue, because it's like statelessness. You can't solve a problem that you can't see. So the more these problems are hidden from citizens of the country and are not discussed, the bigger the problem grows.
Catherine.
Hi. Catherine Fiancambokonga for France 24. I have a question for you, Mrs. Blanchett, and also for Mrs. Sorry, I don't see. Bachelor? Yes. Mrs. Blanchett, you co-created a mini-series, a drama on stateless people in Australia. Are you working with UNHCR in order to make the story more real
And also, do you have the intention also to not only bring awareness in your original country, but maybe because of your fame, use it to aware also the people in the rest of the world through that miniseries?
Yes, I'm always interested in the human. I don't think about my work as an actor as being a soapbox or an agitprop, place to sort of make agitprop pieces of work. But the series is called Stateless, and there's been a bit of bone of contention, I think, because it's not specifically dealing with statelessness, but that is a metaphor. And it was from a real-life story of a woman called Cornelia Rau, who was an Australian citizen of German heritage, a white woman who slipped through the cracks of the mental health system, the justice system, and ultimately the immigration system, and ended up on onshore detention. So we see it as being a prequel to the offshore processing of refugees and asylum seekers. But it's a very important story, and I think my husband and I, who we run a film production company together, we've always think it's very important to put stories into the public eye that provoke conversation. And so to that end, the impact campaign and the discussion around the series is as important as the series itself.
Thank you. I think it was Nina here, and we have, I think, maybe chance for one other question after that.
Nina Larson, AFP. So I have one question for Ms. Blanchett. First, you mentioned that this condition of statelessness brings total invisibility. You're the opposite of that. Could you say a little bit more about your role in shining a light, and what specific situations do you think are the most alarming today when it comes to statelessness? I mean, we've mentioned the Rohingya situation, if you could mention that. And for just one other question for Ms. Mamo, I know that you spent your whole life thinking probably about what it would be like to get a passport in your hand. Could you say if there's anything that surprised you once you finally achieved that goal?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sorry, excuse me. So I know that you thought your whole life about what it would be like to have citizenship. Once you finally achieved your goal, was there anything that surprised you or came as a surprise as what was easier or not as easy as you thought it would be?
Okay. Oh, wow. Well, yeah, I'm still living a normal life. What changed really is the freedom to choose, the freedom to go and come, to do whatever I want. People started treating me more as a human being, more as a visible person. And what really changed is I knew and I believed, but I was the only one, that I could become a citizen. Including my parents, they didn't believe in that. It was far away from this. And once I achieved it, this became a symbol of hope for all other stateless people. I was approached for many others, and not only stateless people, people that they saw a hope and inspiration from my story and my life trajectory. So what changed today is feeling more human, feeling you can change, as Brazil did, any other country can, and seeing all those positive impacts that's going on, and seeing that Brazil became as best practice for others as well, to see like it's not an exception. It's not just because Maha became speaker, okay, let's grant her nationality. No. There was a long mechanism, there were rules, and I passed through all of them, and that's what granted me the nationality. So today I started to dream, to sleep in peace, and started to pray for some other dreams to come true. So I'm trying to achieve small things from my life that I used to dream when I was a kid, like to go to a Disney World, to do those things that anyone dreams about. And today I can do that, so I'm doing this.
I know the amount of time we've spent talking about statelessness, but we've spent as much time talking about Mickey Mouse, really. We'll compare notes. But you were asking what about me being able to highlight. Well, I mean, the irony is that it's a problem of people feeling invisible, but the problem itself is invisible. And to my shame, I didn't know about this problem even existed. So anything I can do to help highlight the problem, basic things, encourage people to share the URL of I Belong and talk about it. And as Maha has so often said, is that if you meet someone who is stateless or hasn't registered their birth, encourage them to do so, because it's one of those things, you don't think about your nationality until you don't. Until a door gets closed because you haven't got the right document. And also stateless people need to be part of the conversation to finding those solutions, because each culture, each country, each territory has slightly different political and socioeconomic concerns around those issues. So I think it's really important to get that information from people from each of those territories. But I also think that, average people like me, I mean, I think what I was so struck by in Maha's story is that the human levers in activating change for Maha were very profound. So-called average people, your friend who, you had a stress-related illness which you could have died from, but your friend took you to the hospital and swapped papers with you so that your life could be saved. A government official whose grandfather was stateless had a connection to Maha's story, which meant that he then could speak on her behalf and be an advocate on her behalf. The head of the university, when Maha, who's now got a master's degree, speaks more languages than I can poke a stick at. It's such a waste of human capital that Maha's had to spend 30 years getting a nationality. But there was one head of university in Lebanon who saw your extraordinary grades and said, you know what? I don't care that you don't have papers. I'm going to give you a place at university. When you encounter these people, just help them. Share their story. And I think it's, that the more stateless people are heard, the more we can help them work towards a concrete solution. Not a bureaucratic solution, but one that actually is born out of the people who are experiencing the problems, themselves. And in the end, I think one of the thing that distresses me in the stateless people I meet, it is always the children. Because it is a generational problem unless it's stopped now. And those children are utterly innocent. And, and when you meet young 9-year-old girls who could so easily become doctors, lawyers, architects, or happy mothers raising children with nationality, it is heartbreaking as a parent to see that.
I think we only have time for one more, but Jamil was first, I think.
Question to my compatriot. Question on what happened after you got your nationality in terms of other cases, because I remember at that time you were two. Where are the others? How many cases? Are you helping them? Is there some kind of a network going on in Brazil to get this moving? Thank you.
In Brazil and outside Brazil. Well, a network, yes. I'm trying my best. As you know, I'm just an activist. I don't work for any organization. I'm trying to do my best as much as I can, sharing my story, getting more contacts. We have some stateless people in Brazil, yes. They are studying their cases, so they are passing on normal procedure like just any other stateless person that is in a country where they have procedure and they are studying it. Since then, I traveled to more than 5 countries, sharing my story, speaking about it. We saw many changes as well in Argentina, in Ecuador, Costa Rica, and many other countries, that they are doing positive changes as Brazil became the best practice for them. So worldwide, we're having our network, but yeah, it's effective, but I'm not the person who's gonna grant them nationality. I don't have this power. I have the power to give them hope, to tell them what are the ways, to tell them how to study more and what to do, to never give up. and to know that even being a stateless person, you should not give up from your education. You should not give up from your basic rights. You always have to find those right people to beg them and ask them for favor. Unfortunately, this is our reality, but we should do it in order to go on and on. So today, we're having some positive other stories as well, yes. I'm in contact with many other stateless people. We have one stateless person that went to Australia because of his skills, because of what he studied and what he could achieve. So that's what I'm doing. That's what I hope I could do, because for me, I achieved only 2/3 of my dream of existence and belonging. The 1/3 died with my brother, who died a stateless person. And that's why the mission here is not only to get nationality. Okay, I got it, I'm so happy, it's great, but we still have a lot of work to do and a lot of awareness to raise and let people know how important it is to register your kids. Because even you, if you have a child, and just for any reason you don't register it, your child is stateless. There's a risk of statelessness until he gets his nationality. So for people who don't understand how important is it, they cannot even know what it is. So it's so important to raise this awareness, to speak about it, to share more and more stories, to know how important it is for a person to exist and to belong.
Thank you very much, everyone. We have to draw a line under it there, I'm afraid. But thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much to our speakers today.
Thank you.